It is the power of God that can comfort the soul. No amount of bickering online about guns or transphobia is going to provide those hurting souls with any sort of comfort. The day after the Nashville shooting, Whoopi Goldberg from The View decides it's a great idea to wear a very insensitive sweater that we're going to talk about. She wanted conversation, right? So conversation she shall have. Plus, totally relevant and not washed up celebrity Madonna decides it's a great idea to throw a charity fundraiser for the trans community in Nashville because transphobia. Also, we need to talk about drag camps for 7-year-olds and the obvious reason why that's weird. All coming up on Bold Reflections. All right, so Whoopi Goldberg once again making headlines. And this is a little bit of an older story, but it might have gotten lost in all of the hubbub surrounding the shooting, of course, and all the different opinions. But here she has a sweatshirt that has some words on it, and if you can't see it, I will read it to you. It says thoughts and prayers, and it has a strike through line through that text, and under it it says policy and change. So essentially the message is F your thoughts and prayers, what we need is policy and change. So let's discuss that. Let's get into that dynamic. The immediate reaction of most school shootings nowadays is the problem is guns. And that is where the sentiment of her sweatshirt is coming from, that gun reform policy is the answer to school shootings. And of course, the right tends to be more pro-gun. I am more pro-gun in this situation because I don't recognize that the problem lies with the weapon. The problem lies with the soul. And it doesn't matter if you eliminate every gun from every home in America, you will still have this problem. You will still have criminals who want to perpetrate evil and cause harm. No amount of gun reform is going to stop that from happening. At the most, you might see a transition from guns to bombs or guns to knives, but the killing's not going to stop. And what makes this really insidious is the fact that the media, of which she is a part of, always takes this narrative and runs with it because it's something that they've been wanting to get by for a while. They have been wanting to remove guns from the population of the United States. Why? So that they can have complete control. When you look at the reason that the Second Amendment was even instituted to begin with, it wasn't even really for self-defense or hunting, like they like to say. It's always about hunting. It's not about hunting. It's about tyranny. It's about having that check and balance when the government is surpassing their established authority. What established authority? It comes from up above. It does not come from man. But the human tendency is to seek control, is to seek power. And what better way to exercise that corrupt absolute power over your citizenry if they don't have weapons to fight you back? If they have no check on your power, then you can do whatever you want. You can go completely unopposed and it doesn't matter what the populace says. You can invade their homes and no one's going to shoot you back. So that is the reason that so many people on the right are not going to just lay down in the face of tragedy and give the government what it's been seeking this whole time, which is more control over the population. So the crossing out of the thoughts and prayers is a really powerful statement from the left in this situation. And it's not exclusively a left-wing thing, but it's definitely dominant on the left side of the aisle. And it's that your thoughts and prayers mean nothing in the face of policy and change. And of course, policy and change comes from the government because they are the enactors of the policy and the catalyst for change, of course. But this replacement theory speaks to a larger point of replacing your God with the government. So no more condolences and prayers. You can't do that if you don't support gun reform, according to the left. And this is, again, another clash of the worldviews. In a political sense, when we're talking about gun reform and how the right recognizes the need for the Second Amendment and how the left will exploit emotions. And of course, emotions are high on this. It is a devastating tragedy. It should never happen, but it's easy to point to guns in this situation and say, if we just got rid of the guns, we wouldn't have this problem. Not only will that not happen, but it will make things significantly worse for so many more people. No longer will we have the ability of self-preservation, especially as a woman. A gun is a great equalizer. So it's just a policy that will inflict more damage than it will prevent. And of course, the dismissal of the power of prayer just goes to show that in mainstream culture, we are embracing secularism. We are embracing atheism, to not just say, well, your thoughts and prayers are valid, but to say, F your thoughts and prayers. We need policy and change, but it needs to be the policy and change that we support, and definitely not your gun-toting Second Amendment policy preservation by any means. Only one side of the aisle is welcome here. All right, so we are going to go into some interesting comments on this tweet. We have Teresa Martinelli says, "The View is an agenda-pushing propaganda hour on TV with activists as hosts. Facts." And I just love how it's in the name, The View, not the views, not the balanced view, just the view, the one and only view that you are allowed to have. And then you have your conservative voice on there that usually doesn't really represent conservatism at all, and they change them out constantly, so I don't even know who's on there now. All right, The View has made their hatred of Christians all too clear. They bring on Hanoi Jane to suggest murdering Christians, and now this, nothing redeeming about these people. I have not heard of Hanoi Jane being on The View. I don't even know who that is, so I'm gonna have to look that up at some point. No, they don't hate Christians. They hate the hypocrisy of Christians. Most talk all Jesus this, Jesus that, but it's a rare Christian that actually walks the Jesus walk. Anyone that chooses their guns over the lives of children is not Christian. Oof. Now that's interesting. Okay, let's break that down. No, they don't hate Christians. I think they do. Honestly, I think they do. Or they at least hate Christians who try their best to stick to a biblical worldview, but not the Christians who are like affirming of their lifestyle. So yeah, they love lukewarm Christians, but I don't think they like evangelical Christians or anything like that. They hate the hypocrisy of Christians. Okay. So, and that is bouncing off this next statement. Most talk all Jesus this, Jesus that, but it's a rare Christian that actually walks the walk. Now that's a sentiment I've seen a lot when I do the Reddit deep dives. It's people hating Christians because of the supposed hypocrisy of Christians. And I always come back with this as everybody is a hypocrite. Every human is a hypocrite. There's those people who love Jesus and love the Bible and do their best to walk that walk. But because we are all fallen, because we all have a sin nature, it's a struggle for so many people in so many different ways to actually live that life and become more like Christ. But Christians tend to be held to a higher standard, and in some ways, I think that's true, and it should be that way, because if we are called to be the light and feet of Jesus, and you fall very short of that, those who scoff and mock will point at that hypocrisy and use it to slander Christ, to slander the gospel, and to bring more people away from Christian values and ethics. So there is something to being careful as a Christian and not just talking the talk and instead walking the walk. However, They end with this statement here: anyone that chooses their guns over the lives of children is not Christian. And that's a false dichotomy. That is not a reality of the people who oppose gun reform, like myself, which I'm not like some kind of excellent debater about this, but I will say I choose to oppose gun reform not over the lives of children because I like love guns. It's more, I value the ability to be able to protect my children with a legally purchased weapon, and you, sir, don't get to dictate that because somebody who is evil used a weapon to murder other people. That's not fair. That's not right. And you can say it's because I like idolize a gun over the lives of children. It's because we value the lives of children, and we value the lives of women, for example, who, like I said earlier, a gun is a great equalizer in a situation where a woman is going to be assaulted. So getting rid of guns will only create more victims. So anyway, that's my response to that. How interesting. I scrolled down a little bit more, and the same person says, can we list MAGA Christians as a hate group? Even though Christians were targeted in this shooting, now we have the rhetoric. Because of our beliefs, if you are a conservative and you are a Christian, you're a hate group. And remember, folks, we will be hated for following Christ. And here's a perfect example of that. The Bible already foretold this. We're not invited to the party. All right. I'm not a religious person, but she's an insult to millions of people. Who gives a crap about her opinion? This pathetic bully needs to be fired. Facts. That's very true. But I'm still going to talk about it anyways, even though really her opinion is not that important. Okay, this is a really awesome comment here. The right to keep and bear arms comes from the common law, which stands above government. You have the inherent right to protect yourself, your family from great bodily injury or death. It comes from the Bible, and all government servants agree they have no authority to trespass. Exactly. And that is the key between, right? Everyone hates Christian conservatives because of this viewpoint. Our rights do not come from the government. They're enshrined in our Constitution, but they are not given to us by the government. So you can't just take them away with a policy. You can't just, Whoopi, policy it out of existence and change our Constitution. You can't just do that because it comes from a higher authority. And we talked about this. That our rights, it's funny how the government will always try to control. And we talked about this before, essentially, is that when you remove God from society, when you remove God from people's lives and the lives of people who run the government, you're going to have this void, and it will be filled with the highest power known to man, which is right now the government. You remove God and you replace it with the government. And that's where we get these communist regimes. That's where we get authoritarians and dictators, because they don't respect the God-given right to protection and to resist tyranny. Although that comment didn't say that, that's the other part of it. All right, change. I bet they have armed guards. Studio has armed guards. Airports have armed guards. Banks have armed guards. Politicians have armed guards. The elite rich, Hollywood, their children, private schools, and many more have armed guards, but public schools do not. Why? So true. This is so true. They, being the rich and famous, and the politicians that support the whole gun reform movement, they have security. They have people with guns to neutralize a threat to their lives at any time. Or pretty much any time, whenever they have their security detail around. The rest of us, po folks, we don't have that. So when you institute the policy and change that Whoopi Goldberg is calling for, again, we are creating more victimized. We're not making this place safer. You're still going to be just fine, because surely they'll have an exception for like armed security for the rich and famous. But for us regular people, we're just sitting ducks. This one says, Christians are always going to pray, and when I'm in crisis, I for one get comfort when friends pray with me or for my situation. What about that bothers you people? Because they don't have the same worldview. Because they don't have the light of Christ in their lives, so they have no idea the peace that passes understanding when you are in crisis, like the families who are dealing with their loved ones being shot up by this evil monster. It is the thoughts and prayers that comfort the soul. It is the power of God that can comfort the soul. No amount of bickering online about guns or transphobia is going to provide those hurting souls with any sort of comfort. That doesn't mean the pain and reality gets wiped away. It's that those people now have a source of peace that those without God cannot understand. It is how they can get through the day. It's how their hearts can be healed. Not that they forget what happened, not that they get over it, but that they can survive another day in this reality. It's just, I guess it's hard to explain. There's the secular view of suffering is that that it needs to be completely eradicated, but that's not the reality of human nature. Suffering is inevitable. Evil happens. And when you don't have God, you give in to nihilism, which is kind of what happens with these shooters. They give in to nihilism. All right, so we have Madonna, super flattering picture of her here. Madonna announces new concert in Nashville to raise money for trans rights groups and not the victims of the school massacre. Nashville right now and Tennessee in general is kind of a battlefront for the cultural clash between transgenderism and childhood protection. Whatever. So we're seeing Tennessee being slandered in the media for what they call anti-trans bills. And even despite the fact that somebody has internalized this rhetoric so much that they ended up shooting up a school in Nashville and killing Christians, we're still going to raise money for trans rights. Because again, Tennessee is actively trying to protect children from being mutilated or having to watch half-naked men perform sexually for them in drag shows. But she goes on to say, this is from her website, with anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, again, this is about the legislation, this is about the fight. With anti-LGBTQ legislation passing in Tennessee and other states, longtime social activist Madonna announced an additional stop on her The Celebration Tour in Nashville on December 22nd. A portion of proceeds from the show will go to trans rights organizations. In regard to the over 100 anti-LGBTQ bills currently before state legislators. Yeah, so you get to use your money and influence to oppose the voice of the people. Why? Because you are a celebrity and you obviously know better than the rest of us, right? Obviously. Presumably, Madonna's PR team is referring to the laws that actually protect children, recent bans on child sex changes, and public drag performances. The oppression of the LGBTQ plus is not only unacceptable and inhumane, it's creating an unsafe environment. It makes America a dangerous place for our most vulnerable citizens, especially trans women of color. So, Black men who are confused, just clarifying. Also, these so-called laws to protect our children are unfounded and pathetic. Anyone with half a brain knows not to F with a drag queen. Bob and I will see you from the stage in Nashville, where we will celebrate the beauty that is the queer community, Madonna said in a statement. So yeah, unfounded and pathetic, you say. Unfounded and pathetic. It was the Daily Wire that broke the story about Vanderbilt, the gender clinic that is actively mutilating minors. You have the left and you have the mainstream that continues to fight a losing battle of ideas. Like, they might win. They might, because we live in a fallen world, a broken and dark society that is antithetical to biblical values. There is a chance that this rhetoric will win out. However, to say that it's unfounded and pathetic, it's unfounded, even though Vanderbilt in Tennessee has already been caught giving unnecessary hormones and surgeries to minor children so that they could profit off of them. It doesn't matter that they're sterilizing these kids. They think that it's going to solve the high suicide rate. It's only going to make it worse. You're destroying these children's lives and then calling it unfounded, pathetic, for wanting drag queens to stay the hell away from kids? Why? Why is that pathetic? It's weird that you even want that. It goes on to talk about the White House siding with the trans community, even in the face of what is now being deemed as a Christian hate crime or a trans terrorist attack. I don't know if I would describe it exactly like that, but maybe it is. Maybe I'm being too soft here. I don't know. But we have the White House press secretary 2 or 3 days after the shooting.
Our hearts go out to the trans community as they are under attack right now.
This is literally right after a trans person shot up a school, but they're under attack. It's unfounded and pathetic. Come on, guys. Then we have Joe Biden. This one is gonna upset you.
Do you believe that Christians were targeted in the Nashville school shooting? Do you believe that Christians were targeted?
So the reporter is asking, do you believe that Christians were targeted during this school shooting? He says, I have no idea.
I have no idea. Josh Hawley believed they were. What do you say to that? Well, I probably know that.
So if Josh Hawley, who is a Republican congressperson, representative, senator, I don't know, one of the two. So if he believes something, I'm automatically against it. If he believes that this was a Christian hate crime, then no, no.
No, I have no idea.
No, you're not joking. Like, put the... Okay, anyway, so that's where our society is. That is what our American culture, our American mainstream feels about the trans rights versus Christians being slandered, being targeted, being attacked. We're just gun-toting hippies, according to these people, with backwards views. It's just crazy. It's crazy. Meanwhile, while Madonna is saying it's unfounded and pathetic, we have, and this is reporting from Libs of TikTok, drag camp for 7-year-olds. But we're not allowed to call them groomers. Right, exactly. Ridiculousness. So here we have, this is utterly disgusting. Camps indoctrinating kids as young as 7 with gender ideology and sexual confusion are now being promoted and subsidized by all government levels. And this looks like it's out of Canada, because we have a lot of the government institutions of Vancouver, Canada Council. So they often say that what goes down in Canada, they're just a couple of steps ahead of us in the States. I don't know if that's true, but it's still worthy of talking about. And here we have these children who are dressed up as drag queens, and your tuition includes a drag makeup kit. Because this is where we're putting our resources. It's sick, guys. It's just super sick. Marjorie Taylor Greene groomers. I don't know how to feel about her, but man, like half the time I think they just hate on her for no reason. Cause she just stands up and she's not taking any of the BS. All right, and then we have WTF, would any sane parent send their kid to a drag summer camp of all things? Absolutely not. I can't imagine what kind of like sexual perversion is behind a drag summer camp. Like, that's not normal. That is not normal. It's really weird and gross. In light of the drag story hour stuff, the drag summer camp, you have celebrities coming out and telling you that it's pathetic and unfounded to oppose this. As if drag queens want children involved in their cabaret performances, if you will. And then you come out with this. And this is being promoted and supported by and paid for the Canadian government, as you can see here. And like I said, Canada, they say Canada is a couple of steps ahead of the United States. And with the pandering and the utter just caving over by the Biden administration for the trans community, even in the aftermath of a school shooting that had to do with a trans person, they still are just pushing this stuff. So it's just interesting. Madonna says it's unfounded and pathetic. You tell me what you think when you see this video. Here is a drag event from Forsyth Tech CC. And the person getting a lap dance is a 10th grader. So So we're pathetic for opposing this. We're unfounded for wanting legislation. We're unfounded for wanting legislation that opposes this disgusting behavior. Why is it okay for this thing right here? I know that's a human, but man, they are lost in darkness. To gyrate on a student, a 10th grade student who's probably what, 15, 16? And then you want the drag camps. And as I covered in another video on my channel, you had the Mommy and Me drag show thing, but it's unfounded and pathetic. All right, and then we have, this is actually, to me, this looks like the same kid that's on this kid right here. I think this is, but this looks like Desmond, who is a very young drag performer, child drag performer, that just look him up. Desmond is amazing. Look that up on YouTube and see what they are doing to this child, and continue to do to this child. And you tell me if that's normal. Is that normal to you? I don't think so. All right. So, but yeah, I think this is the same exact kid who is now 13 years old. But this has been going on for several years, and we're only going to play a few seconds of this video because it's super disturbing. But as you can see, this is the child drag performer, and you have these people just clapping for this kid, grown men recording this child. Do you think this is normal? Does that look normal to you? That's what you want? That's what this is about right here. You want more of those people? You want more fodder for your sexual deviancy. And that's what this is about. That's what all of this is about. You could even make an argument that this push for hormone blockers, this push for trying to keep kids in this prepubescent stage, there's a name for it. I think it's called an autogynephile. Hold on, let me look that up. Autogynephilia. And this is a huge part, by the way, of the push in our culture behind the LGTB, the T, especially the T, and a lot of the plus, the T and the Q of the rainbow flag. This is autogynephilia is defined as a male's propensity to be sexually aroused by the thought of himself as a female. It is the paraphilia that is theorized to underlie transvestitism. transvestism, and some forms of male to female transsexualism. And this is coming out of National Institutes of Health. So this is the thing. And then there's an element of pedophilia that's going on here. So you mix the two, and that's what we're seeing. So I will forever speak out against this ideology. It is perverted, it is dark, it is twisted, and those of us who understand that, whether you're a Christian or not, we have a responsibility to fight this in legislation, to call out celebrities who are trying to push a narrative that will victimize more children. We have to shine light on this darkness. We can't just shake our heads in despair. We have to call it out. And so I will call out people like Madonna. I'm going to call out the people who are behind drag summer camp and the government who is supporting this all day, every day. All right. And after this ridiculous episode of depravity and despair, I do want to leave things off with a little bit of biblical wisdom. Right here, I have in my Logos Bible software pulled up the morning and evening devotionals from Charles Spurgeon. And today, let's read today's because I think it's interesting. So it says, he had never been slow of speech when he could bless the sons of men, but he would not say a single word for himself. Never man spake like this man, and never man was silent like him. Was this singular silence the index of his perfect self-sacrifice? Did it show that he would not utter a word to stay the slaughter of his sacred person, which he had dedicated as an offering for us? Had he so entirely surrendered himself that he would not interfere on his own behalf, even in the minutest degree, but be bound and slain in an unstruggling, uncomplaining victim? Was this silence a type of the defenselessness of sin? Nothing can be said in palliation or excuse of human guilt, and therefore he who bore its whole weight stood speechless before his judge. Is not patient silence the best reply to a gainsaying world? Calm endurance answers some questions infinitely more conclusively than the loftiest eloquence. Oof. The best apologists for Christianity in the early days were its martyrs. The anvil breaks a host of hammers by quietly bearing their blows. Did not the silent Lamb of God furnish us with a grand example of wisdom, where every word was occasion for new blasphemy? Wow, that sounds like today. Every word was an occasion for new blasphemy. That's what I feel like I'm trying to fight against here. Every single thing is a lie. Every single thing is a slander against not only Christians, but the one we serve. Where every word was occasion for new blasphemy, it was the line of duty to afford no fuel for the flame of sin. The ambiguous and the false, the unworthy and mean will ere long overthrow and confute themselves, and therefore the true cannot afford to be quiet and find silence to be its wisdom. Evidently our Lord, by his silence, furnished a remarkable fulfillment of prophecy. A long defense of himself would have been contrary to Isaiah's prediction. He is led as lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before his shearers is dumb, so he openeth not his own mouth. By his quiet, he conclusively proved himself to be the true Lamb of God. As such, we salute him this morning. Be with us, Jesus, and in the silence of our heart, let us hear the voice of thy love. Wow, that's crazy. I like that. There's something to be said for not feeling like you have to defend God. And honestly, I think I struggle with this a little bit. Part of my channel is wanting to confront the lies of the culture with the truth of the Bible and the truth of God's word. Sometimes, though, God doesn't need us to defend him. I think it comes from a desire to, I don't want people to make the same foolish conclusions that I made when I became an atheist, because not all of us are going to have time to realize the error of our mistakes. And as we realize that the time is drawing near for Jesus's return to this earth, even if it doesn't happen during the lifetimes of the people who will hear my talking on YouTube, we all will face the Creator at some point. And so I guess I just want to give people every opportunity to, like, hey, what you're hearing is a lie. Here's the truth. And just open people's minds to a different perspective. But there is a lot of wisdom in this passage here. It's kind of like whenever you are feuding with another human over some conflict, right? And they're throwing insults, they are provoking you to anger. What action gets under their skin more than just staying silent? It's the hardest thing to do. It is so difficult because we feel a righteous indignation. Like, how dare you? How dare you slander me? How dare you not even try to see where I'm coming from on this issue? Let me show you the truth. Let me show you that you're wrong. Where this says calm endurance answers some questions infinitely more conclusively than the loftiest eloquence. There's just so much there. There's just so much wisdom there. Sometimes the most powerful response that you can have is to not respond at all. Just knowing the truth, just knowing that anything you say is going to fuel more the flame of sin, right? No matter how much we want to confront the blasphemy in our culture, Jesus is the perfect example of when silence is the best choice. Sometimes I feel like I've got to get on here and like provide a perfect contrary opinion that edifies God and edifies the body of Christ in light of the culture, but it does cause sometimes a lot of pressure to get it perfectly right, to, you know, every time there's a new opportunity for blasphemy that I must combat it with the truth of the word. And that's not at all the case. I don't have to do this because his sacrifice does it for me. Pretty good stuff. I think this is something we can all apply to our lives. On many occasions, silence is often deafening in the ears of the wicked. So what do you guys think about Whoopi's sweatshirt? What are your thoughts about thoughts and prayers in a situation like this? What are your thoughts about gun reform in a situation like this? Does one replace the other? Is gun reform actually necessary? Do you think it really is going to help? Also, what are your opinions about the whole drag performance conversation? What do you think of Madonna's response to it all, saying that we're unfounded and pathetic to oppose so-called anti-LGBT legislation? What do you think of the wisdom shared by Charles Spurgeon regarding silence in the face of blasphemy? To me, it just seems that the more we fight back against the culture's propagandist take on transgenderism and pushing it in our culture and coaxing children to come to these drag camps, the more we do that, the more angry they get. And one example of which is this video where I talked about Jeffrey Marsh's angry response to critics like myself who are calling out the darkness. Check that video out here. Let me know what you guys think. And as always, God bless.